Johnny Clegg's memoir, in his own words, has been published. It's about his childhood, his musical beginnings, the story of his founding of Juluka in the most tumultuous time in South Africa's history. It's also the story of how the son of an unconventional mom and the grandson of Jewish immigrants came to realize and identify with, well, rather the identity that he had that was a choice. And home is a place that you can leave and return to as sure as seasons change. I had the most incredible conversation with this man not a few months before he died. And we still feel the gap left by him, but you can kind of fix that feeling with listening to his music, and that's going to be eternal. You know, there's a part of Johnny that will always be with us. And I'm just thrilled that we can this morning talk to both his sons, Jaron and Jesse, who are on the line to join us. Both of them extraordinary people in their own right. Jaron is a filmmaker who's made award-winning music videos with his father, for his father while he was still around. And most recently, he's worked on the Halo TV series in Europe, which is based on the popular video game. He's also just directed a science fiction piece that's set in South Africa. So he's no slouch. Here he is, Jaron Clegg. Hey, Jaron, how are you, dude?
Hey, how you guys? How's it, Gareth?
Nice.
How you all doing?
Good to see you, man. And let's just welcome your bro as well, Jesse Clegg, a singer-songwriter well known to us here at cliffcentral.com and to many people in South Africa too. Platinum selling success, 8 top 10 singles. He's been nominated for 5 South African Music Awards. How you doing, Jesse? We can't hear you, Jesse. I think you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry. Good to be back. How's it, Gareth? Nice to see
Good,
you, man.
Yeah, you got this hugely professional studio, but you forgot to unmute your microphone. Well done.
It's just here. I don't know how to use it. I'm just in it.
No, it's brilliant. All right, so guys, first of all, let's just talk a little bit about your dad's incredible legacy, and you know that's fallen on your shoulders now to continue. And there's so many people who feel, as I said in the introduction, they feel a gap that's been left by your dad, but his music is there to fill that gap. And now his stories, which I had a little bit of insight into when I spoke to him last. He really had some incredible stories. My God. I mean, Jesse, I think I spoke to you shortly after your dad died, and you told me how even as kids, he used to talk to you two, about all the incredible adventures that he'd been on when he was your age. And all of those stories, I hope, are included in this memoir because he was so good at storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is so beautiful about the memoir, which was quite surprising to me and my bro, is it is the adventure of a lifetime. I mean, his early years growing up in he was born in the United Kingdom, and then he grew up in then Rhodesia and Zambia and then South Africa, and going on this amazing journey through these African countries, and then eventually landing up in South Africa and meeting Charlie Mzila and experiencing Johannesburg in the late 70s, and just this amazing journey that he went on that was cultural, musical, an inward journey that helped him discover the man that he became, and for me, it just reads like an incredible adventure story, and it's such a beautiful version of South Africa, through his eyes and his perspective, which is so unique. So he definitely shares it in the book, and he shares stuff that he's never shared before either. So it's really a special document, man.
So Jaron, tell us how you actually found the material for this, and how much of it your dad had written, and how much you had to piece together yourselves, and also whether there was stuff in that you'd never heard before, because you guys obviously knew him better than any of us did. But there must have been some things here, because I mean, even if I look at my own family, if I think about the things my dad did as a kid, there's lots I don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, totally. He pieced it together in the most dad-like way. It was like pure chaos. He did, it was like voice notes, it was like documents, it was notes on his phone, it was messages to us. It was like these amazing anecdotes that he really scattered out in all these different, basically as it came to him. It was kind of stream of consciousness, because I mean, his life, we'd like to say like he lived 1,000 lifetimes. He had such a rich range of experiences. So Yeah, so he put it down wherever he could, basically, and then we sourced it with him, and we kind of got all the text together, but there was a lot, and so when we finally went through it, yeah, it was an incredible eye opener. There certainly were things that we weren't even privy to. Whether it's just like in detail how he describes trying to get to Zululand. He always used to say, it was a bit of a tough thing, getting there with Seepaw. But we'd get there, and it was just the most fantastic time. But he goes into detail about how like Seepaw would have to hustle to get him a bus ticket, and like this bus driver would be very perplexed at this white kid on blacks only bus, and speaking in depth about how beautiful like the Tugela River Valley opening up, and like how it was a window into this other world. So yeah, he goes into incredible detail into these like sacred moments, and I think they were sacred to him. So in a way, he kept a lot of that detail to himself until he really kind of spewed it out in this incredible book. So yeah, so that's how it came together, and we pieced it together with Alison, who is the editor, and she did an incredible job of stringing these narratives together thematically, as opposed to kind of a traditional consecutive narrative.
Let me just ask you two, because there's a part of this that's about you, even though the book is about your dad, and you've managed to piece together this incredible tapestry of stories and voice notes and clippings and bits and pieces he left lying around. Did it help you? Because we all have to lose our dads at some point. That's the way of the world. But a lot of people don't ever really have peace. They don't ever really get closure. They don't get to finally say goodbye in the right way. And I know that when you were going through this, it must have been extremely difficult. Did this book and putting together this book give you guys any catharsis? Did it help the family to kind of to deal with his loss? Because that stuff can sometimes be, hugely insightful. It can teach you stuff about yourself and about your dad that you otherwise might not have had.
Yeah, it was a very difficult time, man. He passed towards the end of 2019, and then it was COVID for the following year. Yeah. So we all had to hunker down, and it was amazing though, because we had this project. We had all this stuff that my dad had written, and we knew that this was something that we wanted to honor, and we wanted to allow it to see the light of day. And so it was like a family project, and we sat with all his stories and his memories and his he went and interviewed old bandmates and interviewed old friends from Zululand, and it was just this beautiful little cocoon that we could step into as a family and spend that time. It felt like he was with us. Even though we were grieving, there was this wonderful experience of just reliving his life and honoring it by documenting it and making sure that there was this, this piece that he had put together that he wanted to share. So it was a gift that he left us, man, and it really brought us a lot of closure, and it for us, I think, to have a living document of that time of his life, where it literally it feels like he's in the room talking to you. He wrote it so it's so conversational, it's so true to his voice, man, it really did bring us a huge amount of comfort.
There must be so many people from all over the world who helped in small ways or big ways to contribute to this. I mean, here's Michael who listens to the show, and he says, in the early 90s, I went to interview Johnny at his house on a Sunday, which was his only available day off. He cooked me breakfast as we chatted. I so loved that. That's the kind of thing your dad did, right? And there's so many people who felt they had a connection with him because he was just such a straight up dude. He was just so fun to be around, so relaxed, so confident, like without being arrogant. He managed to just like fill the room with a quiet confidence, and I think that came from all these experiences he had as a young man, and he helped South Africa to find our confidence in some ways, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, he was an incredible. I think something that he really did with his career is, I mean, he completely compartmentalized, kind of over compartmentalized his career in a way. He didn't take it all to celebrity. It wasn't at all his thing. It didn't align with any of his values. He really was, and I think his whole life story speaks to this. He was a junkie on like really connecting, being present, like really connecting with people in front of him. And so I think, yeah, it's incredible how he was able to overcome that, and I mean, well, to navigate that kind of crazy space, and to just still stay this incredibly humble, present person.
So, I mean, both of you could probably have a go at answering this. I remember the last time I spoke to your dad, he was talking to me about anthropology, and he was talking to me about the big picture stuff, like kind of the story of humanity, the story of South Africa, how our differences are so small and the things that we have in common are so big. And that was such a part of what he was doing in his musical career too. But there was this scientist and this really curious, really educated, really sophisticated human being too. Used to lecture people. He could talk. I mean, if you gave your dad runway and he had time and he had the inclination, he could talk about the most incredible things. Undoubtedly, a lot of musicians, people look at one-dimensionally and they go, well, they're a great songwriter, a great singer, great performer. Your dad was all of those things, but also in other ways that are completely unrelated to music. This man was a marvel.
Yeah, I think that the beauty of the book is that you really get to see the inception of that man. He documents quite beautifully the time he spent at Wits University and his time as a lecturer, and he was not a great student in high school, and he had quite a chaotic and unconventional childhood. He didn't have a father figure. A lot of the adults in his life let him down. And when he discovered Zulu culture and Zulu philosophy and the music and a means to express himself, I think it unleashed something in him that was very profound and very deep. And when he got to university and he immersed himself in a world of ideas, he just had this incredible awakening. And I think he was someone who, I mean, he always impressed that upon us. He loved academia, and he had such a deep curiosity about the world, such an incredible openness and inquisitiveness. And he always said to us, you'll never regret gaining knowledge. You must go and study and immerse yourself in a world of academia, because there is so much value to gain. There's so much, it expands your horizons. And I'm certainly very grateful that he impressed that upon us, because it's expanded our horizons as well. So wow. I think he was like a Renaissance man. He could dance, he could sing,
Definitely.
he could wax philosophical. He was a.
Could he cook though? I mean, was that breakfast that he made?
I actually don't think he could cook. I think that was his one downfall.
The one thing.
He was very impatient. I remember whenever he would fry, he would always burn the food.
We finally found Johnny Clegg's downfall.
It took this long for us to get there, so that's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, I wonder how many of us can cook. I'll put my hand up as being useless in that department too.
Likewise.
Oh, good. Okay, it's not just me. So let me go meta for a second here, if you don't mind, because you just brought up the fact that a lot of it wasn't his mom. His mom seems to have been an incredible human being, but a lot of the men in his life kind of let him down when he was a child. And then Zulu culture, not only, I remember him saying this, it taught him also how to be a man, which is something which I know in South Africa a lot of people are struggling with at the moment, because male role models are hard to come by in South Africa, and there are many young people, especially young guys, who are not raised by their fathers, and we have a gap in our society which has never really been filled. There is, however, on the meta, there is this incredible man who you guys were privileged to call your father, and you've both inherited an enormous amount of talent from this guy and creativity. So when you look back on it, if you had to, kind of give it context and perspective, and this is really hard to do, but I'm going to ask you anyway. When you look at that stuff, how much do you think, looking at your own dad, is nature and how much is nurture? And how much of that is in you?
Well,
Do you mean in terms of how much of nature and nurture was kind of brought him up?
Yeah, and then in turn, what you guys received from him from a nature point of view, and then from a nurture point of view. How much is in the genes?
That's a great question. I think Jesse hinted at it quite well. He had this in quite an insane void in his life in his early years because of the kind of the chaos, this congruence of chaos that led to him, having a lacking of paternal values in his life, because the only father figure he had really disappeared, and it led him to really journeying into trying to find an anchor, a paternal anchor in his life, and that was kind of that's kind of the situation he had and what he was born into, but his nature as a person is, I think, what allowed him to make these beautiful magical connections, because as Jesse said, he was just so open and really deeply curious, and I think that is what allowed him to connect so profoundly with Sipho. They were soulmates and the best of friends you could ever hope to have. And it allowed these key players on the other side of the aisle to really embrace him, totally, unconditionally, and to induct him into. He was inducted into Sipho's clan. So his is definitely a great example of how just being open to the world and really having this innocence can help shape your journey, and how others can see it, and how they can have an impact on your life if you're really open to it. And certainly he definitely shared that with us, and he always told us to, as Jesse said, just go expand your horizons, be open, try academia, but also just live on a wide spectrum. And I think I think Jesse and I both certainly have taken that on, and we always try and channel that, going into any, whether it's some crazy wild challenge, whether it's like on set, if it's like raining like crazy, I'd kind of just think of my dad. My dad would be smiling, saying, this is another, you have to warrior through this. This is just another one of those experiences to kind of expand and to flesh you out as a person. So certainly, yeah. I mean, for me, but Jess, what would you say?
Yeah, geez, man. My dad, we're all products of our environment, I think. But my dad is such an interesting case of, I think, nature, because he actually had a very difficult upbringing, a very difficult childhood. And when you look at the pressures that were exerted on him as a young man, I think that his life could have taken many different directions. But his core humanity, his love for human connection and curiosity, it guided him in the most incredible way. There's this hidden force in my dad's life that just guided him along the right path. It's incredible when you read it. It's just incredible to watch it unfold. And in our case, he was a wonderful father. He was someone who gave us the tools to face our life and to face challenges. And so, it's the age-old debate, nature versus nurture. But I mean, in every case, it's a weird combination of things, I guess.
It's really interesting to hear you say all of this now with a bit of reflection. You called it "Scatterling of Africa," of course, one of his most famous songs. I'm not even sure how you would rank those songs, because there's so many of them that I listen to even over this last weekend, I've been listening to your dad's music, and not in preparation for this interview, just because it's on my playlists. And when you think
Nice.
of like how no, of course, and if you think about how to write a memoir, and to then, well, in this case, you're putting it together from stuff that has already been written and recorded, which is a little bit harder. And then to name it, was there a bit of a to and fro about what to call it? Because you could have called it any number of things. All of it,
I think
all of his great music being part of it.
Yeah, well, Scatterling was his favorite song of his own body of work. He always
Really?
said that it. Yeah, he always said that it was the song that launched his career, and it's a song about how we all have, in a deep sense, our origins in Africa, and
Yes.
we're all scatterlings of Africa. And my dad was truly that. He was someone who wasn't even born in Africa, but he found himself there, and he came home, and he was saved by Africa in such a deep sense. The Zulu culture and the Zulu community and the friendships that he made, lifelong friendships, in a real way saved his life. And I think that we all felt like it was a name that was fitting of who he was and the story that this book tells, which is about Africa and about someone finding themselves in Africa.
Sure. I didn't know that it was his favorite song, but now that you say it, it makes perfect sense, and it even brings in that anthropological stuff that we were talking about just a second ago. It's actually it's a perfect name for it. So, okay, is this a book we can buy? Is it something we can also get online for Kindle? Is it available all over the place? Like, this is where we do the marketing push. So tell me where because I'm sure that everybody listening to this now is going, okay, well, you've sold it now. Where can we get it, right?
So it's the physical book is available in all good bookstores, and the audio book and the digital versions are not yet released, but they will be out very soon. So, but for now, it's the physical, and it's out nationwide.
There we go. I just want to go to some of the comments here. Michael, who got your dad to cook him breakfast once, says, if you're a South African living overseas, hearing Johnny Clegg on the radio always stops you in your tracks and turns your heart towards home. It's about right.
Beautiful.
Lovely Lady Lee says, Johnny Clegg's The Crossing, Osieza. That song always gives me goosebumps. Beautiful. You two are both such good-looking guys, according to Moonchild. So let's give your
Put in your pants, Moonchild.
Let's give your mum some credit there. I mean, come on.
Love you, Mom.
I'd like to play a role here. You haven't mentioned your mum once here, and then that's a whole other story. I mean, she's been an incredible pillar of
She's
strength.
writing her own book.
Good. That book would
all
be
those Cleggs.
Yeah. She should call it Trying to Survive with All These Clegg Men. Rudy says, I haven't seen my dad in 17 years. What these boys received from their dad was absolute gold, and that is something to treasure. Yeah. You just said it now, Jesse. He gave you the tools to be able to stand up and be men yourselves. And there's nothing better a father could hear than those words, I'm sure.
That's what's amazing for me, is that he was, I mean, I might be speaking out of turn, but taking it from the stories that you're telling, he was given very little to nothing from a father figure in his life. And to be able to turn that into this magic that he's passed on is just amazing. I mean, if you look at the way humans are, sometimes history repeats itself. And in this case, it was the total opposite.
Totally, yeah. He broke the cycle. I mean, he was incredible. He had an incredible duality as a father. He obviously he had these Zulu warrior values that were at his core and genuinely were. I mean, that was who he was. And so he had these paternal values that he gave to us, but he also, in duality to that, had this. He was incredibly vulnerable with us and open, and he would always, he'd share his fears with us, and he'd tell us, when that he loved us, or when he was having a happy moment. He wasn't just this like wall of, paternal values and just to be strong always. He had this beautiful duality, and
And was there anything that you found out that you were really shocked about, or you thought, I kind of wish I never knew that?
I don't know. I mean,
Jess?
I think that the for me, it was just shocking to see how chaotic some of the family members were. Some of the, his grandfather and his stepfather were both very eccentric people. His real father he never met until he was in his 20s. But there's a lot of big characters in the book. His mom as well was a very eccentric person, and gave him. A complicated she was a complicated parent figure. She supported him and loved him, but she also had her own shortcomings and challenges in her life. And my dad in a way had to parent himself. So I think that was, you always hear about your extended family, but when you actually read it in a book that documents all the chaotic things that happened, it's quite surprising.
Yeah.
Bulelo's back, and Snai Zulu's just going to say here quickly, Jan Bulelo, what do you have to say about the Zulus now? What do you have to say about the Zulus now? Especially because we got two more Zulus on the show this morning. But you guys you were raised in all of that too, right? I mean, Jesse, you spent the first 6 years of your life on tour, and I'm sure Jaron, you were like inducted into all of this just as much as
I
Jesse.
was also on tour. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the age gap between you two, by the way?
It's 7 years.
That's a hell of a gap. Sure.
Yeah. No, we definitely were. We were totally. I mean, it was it's an odd thing. You think, like, when you grow up, you think all these things are very normal. That we're going to be in Joburg for like 6 months, and then we're going to be in Zululand for another 3 months. We're going to be back and forth, or we're going to be touring. We're going to be in Europe. You kind of think all these things are just part of every kid's childhood. But yeah, it was definitely, we were incredibly lucky to have experienced and to have gone into, to be in Zululand so much, and to make like lifelong friendships there, playing with Sipo's kids and getting to know his whole family. We were incredibly lucky.
Are you guys all still close? Do you still communicate with them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We just saw him a few weeks ago. He came up. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and Charlie Mzila, the first guy to teach my dad's guitar, he lives with me. And Bafazan still lives with us. Like, these people are family to us. They really are. And I mean, Sipo and his family are literally like extended family to us.
Well, look, guys, I mean, we've been talking about your dad this morning, which you've been doing your whole lives. But there's so much we could talk to you about individually, and you've both got these incredible and stellar careers. And you make us very proud. I mean, I'm sure your dad was extremely proud and told you that the whole time. But you're also, you're kids of the whole South African mishpocha. So whether you like it or not, we're also hugely impressed by all the things that you've done on your own individual levels. And thank you for making time for us this morning. It's so great to have you both on and to talk to you about this incredible memoir. So there we go, Jesse and Jaron Clegg. It's so great to have you on. The book is called Scatterling of Africa, Johnny Clegg's memoir in his own words. And it should be available at all good bookstores or online. And hopefully we'll have some pictures in there as well. The music will be playing in our heads while we're reading it. It's just perfect. Perfect.
Thank you so much for having us, man.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. There we go, Jesse and Jaron Clegg. Isn't that cool?